Welcome back to Dear Dog Fanatic. I'm your host, Kirsten, but you can call me Kay. I am a virtual dog trainer and dog mom of three, and we have a very special guest. Heather, introduce yourself, introduce your dog. Tell us about you.
Absolutely. So my name is Heather Dolland Tamam. I am originally from Grenada, but I live in New York City. New York City is very much home. And I have a dog named Soca. Soca is a Schnoodle. And for those of you guys who are familiar with Soca, that sounds like an interesting name. Being from Grenada, it is actually a type of music
Oh,
from the
wow.
Caribbean. And so anytime we would get back to the islands, they were like, oh, wow, I guess she's home because, yes, soca, you think of soca and there's music. And I think like the most interesting thing about it is that she actually does love music.
I
So
love
when
that.
she's going through her little, I am a schnoodle and I am so anxious and I'm having 100 moments, I put on some music and it will calm her right down. So yes, perfect match made in heaven.
Absolutely. I'm always happy to chat with other devoted dog moms out there. Tell us about what does Soka's life look like with you? Because obviously you are also self-employed individual. You work for yourself. I imagine a lot of your time is spent like this. Is she
Yes.
chilling out with you at your lap? I think you mentioned earlier before we hopped on recording, your husband's an avid runner. Does she run along with him?
Yeah, no. No running. She prefers to be carried at this stage.
Okay. Yeah.
But for both of us, and I'm very fortunate that we agree on how she should be treated from the
Mm.
very first time we got her. And maybe a little bit of that is my own neuroses, being completely honest. But we always knew that we wanted to make sure that she was not stressed and unnecessarily unhappy because we also began to realize how it bothered us. And so it just so happened the first year that I had her, I was in corporate America. And so with that first period, she went to daycare. And I remember he would drop her off. Typically, I live in New York City. I had to drive out to Long Island. And I remember one day he said to me, he's like, I don't think Sokolai is going to school anymore. And I was like, what happened? And he's like, well, she usually, once he would drop her off, would go running and playing with all the other dogs.
Mm.
But then that one day she stood and looked at him leave. And it's like she developed an awareness. She was just a little bit older. So she might have been maybe about 9 or 10 months old. And she had that awareness that I'm being left behind. But as it so happened, I actually left about 6 months after that and started my own company. So that was back in 2014.
Mm.
And I have been self employed ever since. And she has literally been by my side ever since then. And so I've been very fortunate that she is very agreeable. A lot of people identify me as a woman with a dog in a bag, and we just go about our business. And frankly, the majority of people who meet me who don't know me have no idea that there's a dog at their meeting. Is on mute, chilling. And I think the most, I don't even need to zip up her bag. She knows. Once I say inside time, she's listening, head down. We go into stealth mode. It is hilarious. But as soon as we step onto the sidewalk, the head goes up.
Well, imagine
Exactly.
what's fantastic, my impression anyway about New York is that you can take the dogs on the subway or things like that. I don't know if that's necessarily your mode of transportation, but I imagine for better or for worse, it is quite easy to navigate bringing a dog, at least Soka size.
Exactly. The size is everything, right? And the whole thing for the bus also, because I primarily take the bus and the subway, it is about keeping your dog in a bag. But at the end of the day, as long as she's smaller, but people bring dogs quite literally of all sizes. I've seen Bernice on the bus. I've seen,
Still in a
the,
bag? Because I think there was a rule a while
oh
ago,
my
they're supposed to be in a
gosh.
bag, like a husky. I thought I saw a husky in an IKEA bag
Kia
once. I
bag.
saw a photo, yeah.
There's so many people who do this foolishness. It is hilarious. But for the most part, at least I have no idea if there even is a fine for that. But that is what they say. But for the most part, it's flexible. And I think, being in the city and we're doing all things, as long as the dog isn't causing, they're not biting and everybody is just on their ride getting to their destination. New Yorkers are really pretty chill with that, I must say, for sure.
Such an interesting thing to hear, just given I have the impression of never been to New York. Thankfully, I will be heading there this fall, so I'll get to see it for myself in person for the first time. But you see all the time on TV is, very loud and chaotic, lots of people. So it's intriguing to hear that, oh, actually it is decently dog friendly. when you'd go
You
about it the New York way, at least.
not even just the dogs, please, the birds. I've seen people with reptiles with snakes in the backpack.
Oh,
I feel
wow,
like
okay.
take the dog. Like, yes, it's all kinds. Chickens, parrots, I mean, you name it. But it's a uniqueness that is, New York, right? And you bring your vibe and you bring who you are, however that is. You bring your dog, not your snake, your whatever. I mean, I've seen people with doves, all kinds of things. But yeah, we're just rolling with it. We're just rolling with it.
It's nice to hear that people are really appreciating their pets. They're
Yes,
taking as good of care of them as they're able to do. They're integrating them into their lives. Speaking of
exactly.
which, I imagine it's very helpful having Soka being the size and temperament that she is. The fact that you work for yourself, I imagine it's a combination of remotely and in person.
It is primarily remote, but like we do all the things together. But I really do say that. I'm like, look, I do have a dog. And if this is a hard no and I definitely cannot bring her, oftentimes I've just not gone. I was like, I can't do this. Or I would coordinate with my husband so he can be at home with her because heaven forbid the Schnoodle has to be by herself. She would have a million moments. And if I know that, then I would be stressed and then nothing will be good anyway. So yeah, it kind of just is what it is.
I know you had mentioned before we hopped on the call because I was sharing about my upcoming move using
Sure.
Cunard, making it my way out to the UK and then Ireland. And it sounds like you make that flight with Soka, but to France and then on to London. Is that
Exactly.
regular occurrence for you for work?
So my husband actually has an office in the United Kingdom, and we would go with him on these trips. But unfortunately, he's like, yeah, that's not happening again because a trip that for him should have been 3 days turns into 10 because Soka and I are now on board. So for all of your guests and your listeners who are not familiar, the United Kingdom does not, at least in not with commercial airlines,
Mhm.
they don't permit pets in cabin unless it is a service dog. And so with that, we would typically fly from New York to Paris to Charles de Gaulle. And she would typically need to be there for 48 hours to have a tapeworm medicine. It is just one of the UK requirements. Then we would rent a car and drive from Paris to Calais. That's a 3 hour drive north where we would do the shuttle. And if you want to just stretch your brain, try getting in a car where the wheel is on the right
Yeah.
and then going into a country and having it be completely reversed
Yeah.
because now the slow lane is actually the left lane. No, I'm even confused thinking
I
about
know
it.
it's different.
But
I know what you're talking about. I also don't know, but like France to UK is also different.
Exactly. So it's like driving in France is one thing, driving in France is like being in the United Kingdom, but we're in a French car now in the United Kingdom. So we're on the opposite side of the road. So there isn't that queue, I'm in the wrong lane.
Yeah.
Uh, but then it takes like another 3 hours. So going from Calais in France to Folkestone in London is actually very short. It's only 30 minutes. It's underwater in the train. It is absolutely fantastic. And then it takes like another 30 minutes to go to London and wherever else you need to go after that. And you have to go through like and you need a pet passport, by the way.
Yep.
If you decide that you want to take this journey, make sure you have your pet passport and all of your, my goodness, the code, oh my, for the scan. Help me, help me,
Microchip.
help me. Thank you very much.
Yes.
The microchip and all those other things that they require. But that pet passport, yes. For this reason, Soka does have a French passport. Yes.
Frequent flyer. Did she
Right.
ever come I think you had mentioned previously, of course, you had named her after what
Like,
you called the music from your home. Does she travel
yes.
with you back home as well, or does she stay in New York?
19 countries and counting.
Frequent flyer.
Not counting. She did her very first trip at 7 months old to Miami.
Mm.
I was like, all right, okay, how is this working off? It was fine. Then when she was 9 months old, that was her first trip to Grenada. And she has been to Grenada, to Europe, I mean, all over the place, literally all 19 countries and counting. But yes, she has been to Grenada a number of times.
How old is she now?
13. She's 13 years old and she, knock on wood, her energy, her everything is so amazing. And like her spunk, I am very fortunate because I feel like Soka came to us perfect. And I feel like we all probably think our dogs are perfect. But her temperament, it just makes all of doing all of those things that much, much easier. But there is also the part of me that wonders if because, well, the flip side of having her always with us is that she could never be by herself, ever. Her being by herself is not a thing. Everybody would regret it. The neighbors will, upstairs, downstairs, she would howl and howl. And she's such a good girl. So at this point, it's been ages since I've had a cocktail, worn a cocktail bag or a little purse. All of my bags are totes. And I'm like, people that don't know me, I'm like, oh my God, they're judging me because I am in a gown in a tote. At this point, with a tote on my shoulder, at this point, like people who invite us even to like their weddings, they understand that we're a group deal. So if you don't want Soka to come, don't invite us and it'll be okay. Nobody's going to be upset. But
Yeah.
she has like her own wedding bag and her own wedding harness and the leash.
Oh,
So
I love that. So she matches your
of
outfit. She's ready
course,
to attend. Oh, this
everything is coordinated.
I'll send you obviously, we'll be in communication after we wrap
Yes.
up recording, and I'll email you. I recently got married at the end of March, and we eloped, my dogs were
Congratulations.
there. Where I was going with that is my dogs all had outfits, so I'm visualizing in my head what Soka's wearing to this wedding.
Exact. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you get into a little bit more? Because obviously, we're chatting about dogs all day, but I'm sure people are curious. What is it that you do that allows you to be able to have this flexibility and travel and take Soka with you?
So that has been a true evolution. So I came here from Grenada in 1995 to study architecture. And very quickly, well, going back just a little bit further, my thesis didn't quite go the way that I thought it was going to. I ended up failing because even though I had a thesis professor, because I wanted to renovate a historic site in Grenada,
Okay.
they're like, how could you dare touch such a
Uh,
historic structure? That part of it, they were not pleased. I ended up eventually passing by creating something that was horribly ugly and really was just like distressing on my soul.
mm,
And I'm like, now what am I going to do? Ended up doing my master's in environmental consulting. And very quickly, even though I worked for an amazing company with wonderful people, I knew I was not living in my purpose. And I could see all these people who were, except I had no idea what that meant. And so I have shifted careers at this point 4 times, not because I have a severe case of attention deficit, but because I was genuinely wanting to be happy.
mm,
To put like, what is that thing that I am called to do? And it took me a really long time to figure it out. But what I ended up doing was writing. I used books as tools to be able to shift careers and teaching other people. As I began to realize that a number of people stay stuck in their careers. They're not certain how to leverage the knowledge that they have.
mm,
That is what I now teach. So for people, because I often say, for many of us, we don't have a knowledge problem, we have a positioning problem
okay,
because we do not understand how to leverage the knowledge that we have because we don't value the experience that we have. Because for so many, we're doing this thing that is so easy. You do this all day, every day, and you're not imagining that it has value to somebody else that doesn't. And so, what I do is to help you understand how to value the knowledge and the experience that you have, how you can turn that thing into something that would sustain your life. And sometimes it takes a long time. For me, it took a very, very long time. But my whole thing is about genuinely just being relentlessly flexible. Sometimes you have a vision and things don't work out the way that you think that it should, but it is working for you. And information, you are getting information, even though it may not be the information that you are desirous of, but it's the information that you need. And so if we could not be so inflexible and holding on to and being so dogged about, no pun intended, about this is where I want to go and this is and it has to be this, but really just enjoying the journey along the way. I often say that I feel like my entire life I've just been on the local bus, stopping at every single stop. But that bus has taught me so much more than if I had gone express.
mm,
Because every single one of those stops has allowed me to learn something that was not only valuable to me, but then I was able to share that value with other people. And that is what has allowed me to be able to be here. Because for so much of my professional life, I wanted to have that freedom. And I had no idea. And so, really, 3 businesses later, I finally figured it out, which is why I get to be here with you today.
Amazing. And I imagine first I'm going to add my own little interjection here and then I have a question. This explains so much about how people relate with their dogs. So many people will get dogs and they'll think this is what it means to have a dog. And then sometimes either due to life changes, their dog having reactivity, they end up
Yes.
picking a dog that maybe upon reflection wasn't the most compatible with them.
Right.
And then they have
Right.
to pivot, and then they have
Right.
to figure out, "Okay, this isn't the journey that I thought we were on, but we're on the journey now, and let's see where this takes us." What I will circle back to is, and how do you help people do this? Is this through coaching? Is this through a book that you're writing? Do you have your own podcast?
So it is through coaching. I my fifth book, which is shocking to say, especially as an individual who cannot stand writing. It feels blasphemous. I'm like, yes, I am an author who can't stand writing. However, I love to speak. And so I leverage technology. And so I share that. My most recent book, well, actually, it's not most recent because my most recent one is still before me, is called The Quick Author Formula. But this one, Create Your Own Table, A Guide to Discovering Your Purpose, I wrote this using speech to text because when we speak, there is not the filter that exists, for example, when we are typing.
Yes.
Because once you're typing, you end up in your head, you're thinking about the sentence, is it structured correctly? When you're speaking, there's so much more flow. And so I teach people how to do that. I do also have a podcast. And I have a YouTube channel as well, where it's really about meeting you where you are. Again, for so many people, they have tons of experience, and it's helping you to understand how that experience can be valuable. Because for so many people, we're focused on a financial goal, but my advice is what if you focused on your soul goal? What if you focus on answering that calling, that thing that is in you? And for many people, because they don't think that that would sustain them, it's a hard no. And I don't want to go down that road, but I'm like, what if we just take the pressure off the soul message a little bit? You could just do that thing because it makes you feel good. It sustains you. And all of a sudden, that job that you don't like, that you hate, that you despise, all of a sudden, you really begin to appreciate it. Why? Because it's funding
What
that
it is that
other
you're actually
thing.
wanting to do.
Exactly. And so give yourself grace, give the dream, give all of that. And so it's really just supporting people through that transition and to be able to just see that this is an option that's available to you. Just take the pressure off.
And who ends up being the types of folks that really benefit? I think lots of people could benefit from this, but I've spoken to a few different folks in this area. I myself have, despite my youthful appearance, been through multiple different industries in multiple
Sure.
different positions. Different generations, there is a different expectancy around how long one should remain in certain positions. I grew up knowing and going through university that I think it was 8 by the time I graduated that people will make 8 major moves, and that's not just what the
Right.
position is, it's also industry. We're jumping all over the place. So I
Yes.
imagine this is going to be very helpful to a lot of people. At what point should people be reaching out to you?
There is no should in that. They're genuine because everybody's journey is very, very different. And when I say I meet you where you are, I mean exactly that. Because it could be the person who got unexpectedly laid off. I had someone, he was in this position for more than 30 years, thought there was going to be a raise, end up getting fired. Last thing they expected to happen. And so, okay, what do you do when you have a shift like that? No, that is a very extreme scenario because the shock of something like that, especially later on in life, is very difficult. So there's a lot of emotional work that has to be done because not everyone sees themselves as being able to be the entrepreneur. So there's a mindset part to that as well. So individuals could be coming after a layoff has occurred, depending on their emotional readiness, because for Many times I'm able to identify, okay, I see that you're here, but I realize that this is actually not the place for you because you're not ready. Being an entrepreneur is a journey in and of itself that comes with a lot of challenges. If you don't have that sustenance within you, it is going to be miserable. And the experience that it can be, it will not. It is also one of the reasons that I took the time to write Create Your Own Table because it is a bit of a blueprint of readiness. Maybe it's just a side hustle. Maybe all you want to know right now is what that thing can be. You may be already retired, however, and you're like, I have a ton of knowledge, a ton of energy, a ton of experience. What I don't have is know-how. I'm not familiar with technology. I'm not comfortable using, I feel like I've been out to the market, so it really genuinely depends on where they are. And then there are other individuals who are late 30s, early 40s, and they're realizing that that corner office is just not coming.
Yeah.
That raise is just not coming, and that frustration is there. And they have the ideas, but they don't know what the first step is. And I always say, you know what? You don't need a business plan. What you need is a starting point. And so I have different programs that would help you. But my books, even particularly this one, Create Your Own Table. I realized when I was in the alcohol business that books are amazing filters. At this stage, well, really, that is how it began. I wrote as a filter so that my ideal client would identify me. More importantly, they would understand how I think, the way that I approach things. So a book would always work much harder than any resume, any LinkedIn profile, any business card ever would. And I use my book so that my right fit client would identify me. And I put my crazy in there from chapter 2. I'm like, look, this is everything.
Disclaimer, you were warned.
And so if after you read all, I'm like, I'm not even leaving it to the end. Right up front, you know exactly who you're getting. So if you get to the end of it and you're like, all right, okay, we're good, we're solid. And so I meet you genuinely where you are, and we could take that journey together.
No, I love that. And for a little bit of background for those who yourself and those who aren't aware, primarily I work with dog owners. More specifically, I tend to work with dog owners who work from home, are self-employed, are
Oh,
freelancers. And I've noticed a lot of the folks I end up working with, there is and who are really passionate about living life with their dog. Not that their dog is an accessory to them, but like their dog is someone that they're in relationship with, that they genuinely
yes,
care about. They
sure,
especially those of us who are maybe too devoted, we tend to build our lives around our dog. And to your
sure.
point, you can see this connection where people will go after what they want, like the people who work with you, they will be self-employed, they'll work for themselves, so they have the time, money, and freedom to be able to live the life that they're wanting with their dog. I'm not saying that
Sure.
you can't do that working 9 to 5. It's just a lot of the folks that I've ended up working with, and I think we see this industry, I don't even wanna say industry-wide, society-wide. We've walked into the point where you will hit a ceiling working salary. It's just the reality just due to the current economic model. It's why so many of us end up having side hustles
Yes.
eventually, and you don't have to have certain economic goals. I don't think either of us are saying here that saying you have to think this way.
No.
But if you have certain goals that you're wanting to meet, entrepreneurship is one of those avenues available to you. And so I always really love working with entrepreneurs with dogs. Those are kind of my favorite folks to work with for that reason, is because they know who they are really well. You kind of have to, especially if you've been an entrepreneur for a while, because that's not an easy thing to do. And because they know themselves so well and are so adaptable, so flexible, I find that they are oftentimes very adaptable and flexible when it comes to their dog.
It would make sense. And as anyone who owns a dog knows, they are extraordinarily expensive.
Yes.
You
Yes.
travel as much as I do, internationally in particular, with all of the paperwork that has to be endorsed. What? Every time I'm like, I am in the wrong profession because it is a king's ransom every single time. So it does afford that, but yes, you're not wrong with that's concerned. It is very, And it's interesting energy wise how you ended up attracting a lot of these individuals also, right?
That wasn't necessarily what I
The
was
plan.
setting out for,
Yeah.
but it just ended up I was like someone had asked me, "Oh, who do you end up normally working with?" I'm like, "Actually, this is a lot of people that work for themselves or work from home." And I don't know if it's just something about me or if it's the type of people that want to do the kind of work with their dogs that I provide, or maybe they get working online with a dog trainer because they themselves work online. I'm not entirely sure, but this is where we
I
are.
so believe in energy and just things finding themselves. I am a relentlessly flexible human being. And I'll tell you, in the core of COVID, I wrote this book, Pivot, because life doesn't always go as planned. And I was so miserable, unhappy, depressed, frustrated, all of the things. I ended up writing this book. It felt like throwing spaghetti against the wall because I'm like, I know I have a ton of knowledge, a ton of experience. I didn't go through all of this for no reason. What am I going to do in my life? And it was not until I wrote this book and read the reviews and everybody latched onto of all the things that I shared in here.
Yeah.
Wow, I can't believe you shift careers so many times. How did you do that? How did you do that? And I'm thinking, wait, you guys don't all do that also? I took my knowledge for granted,
Yeah, yeah.
completely took it for granted. And right there, I opened my eyes and I realized, oh, I know how to solve these problems, and that's why I wrote this. But then, as I wrote this, and I'm thinking, Art, okay, I'm just going to be helping these people figure this out. All of a sudden, the resorts came along and the retreats. Would you like to do a retreat? Would you like to do a workshop? And I'm like, really? And so, exactly to the point that you're making, right? We start doing things and then you start to see the different things that open up. Life shows itself. Like you show up as you and then everything else kind of falls into its own place. And so I feel like I am on this amazing journey also because it's funny that this book is called, this Create Your Own Table, A Guide to Discovering Your Purpose. I feel like it allowed me very much step into mine and it's still evolving as I'm like, okay, now what is going to come next? And just being here for it.
No, I love that, and I definitely think that I am looking forward to checking out your books because as much
You.
as I feel fairly solid that this is what I am meant to be doing, I know that there is a future iteration on the horizon. I don't know what it is yet, so I'm always looking for that inspiration.
You're also about to be in another country.
That is also people keep asking me, "Are you gonna go do anything different?" I'm like, "Well, I'm
You'll
working
see.
online, so I can just work online." However,
You'll
I
see.
I don't think people stay in the same to this point that we've been talking about the whole time. I don't think that people continue to do the same thing over and over again. A lot of the people that I look up to, both in my industry and others, and people might think, "Oh, like what is there to innovate that much about dogs?" In the industry, you can specialize in a lot of different things.
Absolutely.
All the people I look up to, they didn't stay and just do one thing the whole time. They have pivoted, they have expanded, they have grown, they have gone and done things intersectionally and woven different parts into their
Mhm.
career. So I am very open to being surprised.
Being just relentlessly flexible.
Mm.
I was sharing earlier in an interview that my whole thing is I am self-published. My very first book was traditional publisher, but realizing that if I am at the helm, I could control things. So that's the reason that my books come out very quickly. I could control the entire process. But these two books were recorded because again, as a dog mom, I'm always walking.
Yes.
I'm walking here in the park. So
Nope,
I'm listening.
absolutely. This is how most of my social media posts are this. It's me voice memoing to myself what it is
Exactly.
I'm doing later. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm listening, I'm listening. So my books had to be audio format.
Mm.
And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to write the quick author formula because a lot of people think you're a writer. I was like, please stop calling me that. I talk a lot. And so I got this done from just speaking. And it's not that hard. And then I realized, you know what? To me, let me write something that shows you exactly how in the framework. But then I'm like, I'm going to take it one step further and do the audiobook at home myself
Wow. Incredible.
without headset, microphone, using the same platform. So you heard it here that I use for my podcast. Because as we know in this time that we live in, that quality is studio quality. And I'm like, my Lord, I barely just finished my fifth book. Is there about to be another one? Who would be? But that's what I do,
Yeah.
right? I had no idea I was going to do this. 2 weeks ago, I realized I was going to put this book up. Because and I'm like, "It's done." And then I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I could do this." And so, yes, just be flexible. Just be flexible. You never know.
I think that's the biggest thing that I'm going to take away from this conversation. And I'm going to go back and ruminate because I can already feel percolating. And when I post it, I will tag you. I'm sure there's a formula for relentlessly flexible as it relates to dog ownership and dog training. And I'm like, it's just so many words of wisdom and encouragement. I've really enjoyed speaking to you today. And it's, yeah, already I feel like you've done me a favor for sure coming on the podcast because I have a million ideas of like, yeah,
I
absolutely. I
am
can go write those books I've been sitting on.
I'm here for it, and you can speak them. Just take that, and I feel like, look, just 500 words, right? When getting through this book, I was just like, you know what, Heather, just have a win at 9 o'clock.
Yep.
Have a win before 9 o'clock. That's it. And I would do it. I'll go walk Soca. I'll come back. I was like, all right, okay. I'll sit for another 30 minutes because I really genuinely can't stand it. I'm not kidding you. I cannot stand it. But then you see the momentum and you see the
Mm,
progress, and it gives you the energy and the
absolutely.
motivation and everything that you need to keep pushing through. And voila, then it's done and it's out in the world. And then the world sees it and then figure it out.
No,
Yeah.
I love
Good
that.
times.
Okay, now is going to be a great segue and opportunity. Where can everyone find you? You've said the titles of the books, plug them again, and we will link everything in the show notes so it's easy for people to find it.
But even easier is my name,
Mm,
Heather Dolland Tamam. So that is my personal website. My books are on there, as well as my business website, which is daltam.com. So it's DOLTAM.com. But on there, all of my books are there as well. But yes, thank you so very much for allowing me to be here. This has been an absolute pleasure. My entire premise is to be able to be, to serve and to provide value. And so thank you so very much for this opportunity and for speaking about dogs because, what feeds, I mean, Soka is truly, the sun, the earth, the moon, everything just rotates around her. So, as I'm sure most dog owners do feel about their pets as well. So, yeah, thank you for
absolutely.
this.
Absolutely. I'm always so happy to have other dog owners on the podcast because a lot of people will think, oh, it's easy for you, Kirsten. You're a dog trainer. So I like to highlight for other people. You don't need to be a dog trainer to be able to give your dog a fulfilling life. There's a bunch of different ways. So I just love
Yeah,
having those like case studies or those examples for people to see
sure.
that, like, yeah, they can do it too.
Yeah.
But thank you folks for tuning in. I will see you next time on Dear Dog Fanatic. And please give your dog some scritches for me and Heather.